Adam had finally found the perfect place to call home. After years of living in the bustling chaos of the city, he yearned for peace and quiet. A sanctuary where he could breathe, relax, and perhaps start anew. The suburban neighborhood seemed idyllic with its tree-lined streets, neatly trimmed lawns, and the kind of friendly neighbors who waved from their porches. It was a slice of the American dream. The house itself was modest but charming, a cozy two-story with a spacious backyard that Adam had grand plans for. Sure, there was the matter of the HOA, something he'd only heard of in passing but never experienced. The idea of a community organization dictating how he could decorate his home or maintain his garden didn't sit well with him. Still, the neighborhood's charm outweighed the potential hassle, or so he thought. It wasn't long before he began hearing whispers about Martha, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA. She had been president for nearly a decade, a tenure marked by her relentless pursuit of perfection, or at least her version of it. Martha's name came up during his first casual conversation with a neighbor, who warned him with a chuckle, "Watch out for Martha. She's got an eye on everything and everyone." Adam dismissed it as harmless gossip, thinking it was likely exaggerated. After all, how bad could one person be? Unbeknownst to him, Martha's rule over the neighborhood was less about maintaining harmony and more about wielding control. Residents either complied with her strict standards or risked becoming her next target. But Adam, eager to settle into his new life, brushed off the warnings. He had no intention of becoming embroiled in neighborhood politics. For now, he was content to enjoy the quiet and focus on making his house a home. Little did he know, his arrival had already caught Martha's attention, and she had no intention of letting him slip under the radar. It started on a sunny afternoon while Adam was busy planting roses in his backyard. The garden had been neglected by the previous owner, and Adam was determined to revive it, turning the overgrown patch of weeds into something vibrant and alive. He'd just finished patting down the soil around his latest addition when the sound of a sharp knock at the front door startled him. Wiping his hands on his jeans, Adam made his way to the door, expecting a delivery or perhaps a friendly neighbor stopping by to say hello. Instead, he found himself face to face with a woman who exuded authority, her sharp features framed by perfectly styled gray hair. She clutched a clipboard and wore a tight-lipped smile that didn't reach her piercing blue eyes. "Good afternoon," the woman chirped, her tone a mix of forced cheerfulness and condescension. "I'm Martha, the president of our HOA. I'm here for a quick inspection." Adam blinked, momentarily thrown off. "Inspection? Of what?" "Your property, of course," she replied, leaning slightly to peer past him toward the backyard. "We have certain standards to uphold in this neighborhood, and I need to ensure everything is in compliance." Adam straightened, his polite demeanor shifting to one of quiet resolve. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm not part of the HOA. I didn't sign any agreements when I bought the house." Martha's expression faltered just for a moment before her steely resolve returned. "Whether you signed or not is irrelevant. All properties in this neighborhood are subject to the HOA's rules. Now, if you'll excuse me." She moved to step past him, but Adam blocked her path. "With all due respect, you don't have the right to inspect my property without my permission. I'm asking you to leave." Her face flushed and her smile disappeared entirely. "This is highly uncooperative behavior," she snapped, her tone ice cold. "I suggest you think carefully about how you handle this. The HOA doesn't take violations lightly." Adam didn't budge. "I'm not violating anything, and unless you have legal authority, you need to go." Martha's jaw tightened as she clicked her pen aggressively against the clipboard. "Fine," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "But this isn't over. You'll be hearing from me." She spun on her heel and marched down the driveway, her high heels clacking against the pavement. Adam watched her go, a mix of annoyance and unease settling in his chest. He hadn't done anything wrong, yet her words felt like a promise of trouble to come. Shaking his head, he returned to his backyard, determined not to let the encounter dampen his spirits. But as he glanced at the newly planted roses, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger problem. The next morning, Adam found a bright red notice taped to his front door. It was impossible to miss, glaring at him like a neon warning sign. Frowning, he peeled it off and read through the contents. The notice claimed he was in violation of HOA guidelines for several infractions: the height of his backyard fence, the placement of his garden, and the color of his mailbox, which hadn't been touched since he moved in. Ridiculous, Adam muttered under his breath. He wasn't even part of the HOA. How could they enforce rules on him? He flipped the notice over looking for some kind of explanation, but it was as arbitrary as it was bold. There was even a fine listed, $500 if he didn't correct the violations within 10 days. Adam wasn't about to let it slide. He snapped a photo of the notice and forwarded it to Jonathan, his lawyer. A no-nonsense attorney with a knack for handling petty disputes, Jonathan called within minutes of receiving the photo. "This is a scare tactic," Jonathan assured him. "If you're not officially part of the HOA, they have no legal standing to enforce their rules on your property. Document everything and let me know if they escalate." Feeling a bit reassured, Adam tried to put the incident out of his mind. He spent the next few days tending to his garden, fixing up the fence and settling into his new home. But it didn't take long for Martha to make her presence felt again. One evening, as Adam watered his plants, he noticed a car parked across the street. The vehicle's headlights were off, but the silhouette of a figure inside was unmistakable. Adam squinted, trying to make out who it was, and then he saw the faint glow of a phone screen. The person was taking pictures of his yard. Frustrated, Adam waved at the car, but as soon as he did, the engine roared to life and the vehicle sped off. Though he hadn't seen the driver's face, he had a sinking feeling it was Martha. Who else would be that invested in his property? The next day, Adam decided to take action. He ordered a security camera system online and spent an afternoon installing it around his property. It wasn't just about catching Martha in the act. It was about peace of mind. He refused to live in fear of being watched or harassed. But just as he started to feel some semblance of control, another letter arrived. This one was more formal, bearing the HOA's letterhead and demanding his presence at the next community meeting to address violations and discuss a resolution. The letter ended with a threat of legal action should he fail to comply. Adam's frustration boiled over. Enough was enough. He drafted a letter in response, making it clear that he was not part of the HOA and that any further harassment would be met with legal action. He attached copies of the violation notice, the photos of the car across the street, and a detailed account of his interactions with Martha. He sent the letter via certified mail, ensuring it would be delivered directly to the HOA office. As he sealed the envelope, he couldn't help but feel a mix of satisfaction and apprehension. He wasn't backing down, but he knew Martha wouldn't either. The battle lines had been drawn and the war was only just beginning. Days passed without any sign of Martha. Adam kept an eye on his security cameras and checked his mailbox warily each morning, expecting another barrage of letters or notices. But everything was quiet. Too quiet. He allowed himself to hope that perhaps his firm response had finally gotten through to her. Maybe, just maybe, she'd moved on. That illusion was shattered one morning when Adam stepped into his backyard to find the gate wide open. His stomach dropped. He had locked it the night before, he was certain of it. Upon closer inspection, his worst fears were confirmed. The lock had been cut cleanly and the metal pieces lay scattered on the ground. Heart pounding, Adam checked his cameras. Sure enough, the footage showed a shadowy figure approaching the gate under the cover of darkness. Though the person had their face obscured by a hoodie, their stature and mannerisms were eerily familiar. Adam couldn't prove it was Martha, but deep down he knew. His first call was to Jonathan. "This just crossed the line," Adam said, his voice tight with frustration. Jonathan agreed. "This isn't just harassment anymore. It's trespassing. File a police report immediately. We'll add this to the documentation." Adam wasted no time. He contacted the police and filed a report, explaining the escalating situation and sharing the footage from his security cameras. The responding officer took it seriously, advising Adam to reinforce his locks and remain vigilant. Though they couldn't directly accuse Martha without more evidence, the officer hinted that they would be keeping an eye on the neighborhood. Despite the reassurance, Adam couldn't shake the unease that had settled over him. He reinforced the gate with a sturdier lock and adjusted his security cameras to cover more angles. Yet the feeling of vulnerability lingered. His home, which was supposed to be his sanctuary, now felt like a battleground. Then just a few days later, another letter arrived. This one wasn't taped to his door or left in his mailbox. It was slipped under his front door in the dead of night. Adam unfolded it with trembling hands, finding a single typed sentence. "You can't win this. Leave now or things will get worse." A chill ran down his spine. This wasn't just about HOA rules anymore. This was personal. Adam called Jonathan again, who immediately set up a meeting. "This is escalating faster than I anticipated," Jonathan admitted. "It's time to go on the offensive. We'll confront the HOA directly, and if Martha is behind this, we'll force her hand." As Adam hung up the phone, he resolved not to let fear control him. Martha had underestimated him, but she was about to learn just how determined he could be. The stakes were higher now, and Adam wasn't just defending his property, he was fighting for his peace of mind. The day of the HOA meeting arrived, and Adam walked into the community center with his head held high. The small room was filled with folding chairs, arranged in a circle, and a handful of neighbors had already taken their seats. At the front of the room, Martha stood with her clipboard, exuding an air of authority. Her smug expression faltered briefly when she saw Adam enter, but she quickly recovered, offering a tight smile that didn't hide her contempt. Adam sat down near the back, observing as the meeting got underway. Martha began by running through a list of minor community updates: new landscaping by the entrance, a potential fundraiser for holiday decorations, before turning her attention to the so-called violations. "And now, we need to address an issue that's been affecting the harmony of our neighborhood," Martha announced, glancing in Adam's direction. "One of our residents has repeatedly failed to comply with community standards, and despite multiple notices, the situation remains unresolved." All eyes turned to Adam. He could feel the weight of their stares but remained calm. This was exactly what he had prepared for. Martha gestured dramatically toward Adam. "Mr. Williams, we've been more than patient. You've refused inspections, ignored violation notices, and disrupted the aesthetic balance of our neighborhood. This meeting is your chance to explain yourself before further actions are taken." Adam stood, meeting her gaze with unwavering confidence. "First of all," he began, "I'd like to clarify something. I'm not a member of this HOA. I never signed any agreement and therefore I'm not bound by its rules." A murmur spread through the room and Martha's face turned red. "That's irrelevant," she snapped. "All properties in this neighborhood fall under the HOA's jurisdiction." "Actually, that's not true," Adam replied, pulling out a stack of papers. "I've consulted my lawyer and we've confirmed that my property was never included in the HOA's original charter. You have no legal authority over me or my property." The murmurs grew louder as neighbors exchanged glances. Adam wasn't done. "Furthermore," he continued, holding up a copy of the threatening letter, "I've been subjected to harassment, trespassing, and veiled threats. This is unacceptable behavior, and I have every intention of pursuing legal action if it doesn't stop." Martha's composure began to crack. "This is absurd," she said, her voice rising. "You're making baseless accusations." "Am I?" Adam interrupted, pulling out another piece of evidence. "I have security footage of someone tampering with my gate. I also have documentation of every violation notice you've sent, none of which have any legal standing." The room fell silent. Martha opened her mouth to respond but seemed to realize she had nothing to say. One of the board members, an older man named Richard, cleared his throat. "Is this true, Martha?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Did you authorize these actions without proper authority?" Martha stammered, her confidence visibly shaken. I was acting in the best interest of the community," she said weakly. Richard shook his head. "That's not how this works. If Mr. Williams isn't part of the HOA, we have no grounds to enforce anything on his property." The meeting ended in chaos, with neighbors demanding answers from Martha and the board agreeing to investigate her conduct. Martha stormed out before it was over, muttering threats under her breath as she passed Adam. Though he felt a sense of victory, Adam knew this wasn't the end. Martha's pride had been wounded, and her response would likely be even more unpredictable. But for the first time he felt like the tide was turning. She wasn't invincible and her reign of control was beginning to crumble. The days following the meeting were a whirlwind of rumors and revelations. Adam had expected Martha to retaliate, but what he hadn't anticipated was the level of corruption that began to surface. It started with a call from Jonathan, his lawyer, who sounded unusually serious. "Adam, I've uncovered something you need to see," Jonathan said. "It's bigger than we thought." Curious and concerned, Adam met Jonathan at his office, where a stack of documents awaited him. Jonathan explained that during his research, he'd come across internal HOA emails and memos that painted a disturbing picture. Martha's been exploiting her position as HOA president for years, Jonathan revealed. She's been funneling HOA funds into her own ventures, bullying contractors into deals that benefit her personally, and using her authority to intimidate anyone who questions her. Adam's jaw tightened as Jonathan continued. One memo detailed a shady arrangement between Martha and a landscaping company she had hired exclusively for the neighborhood. The catch: Martha was receiving kickbacks for every contract the company secured. Another email showed her pressuring the board to enforce unnecessary regulations on specific properties, most of them owned by people who had spoken out against her. "This isn't just about you," Jonathan said. "She's been running a full-blown racket, using the HOA as her personal power trip. The more I dig, the uglier it gets." Adam's frustration turned to resolve. "What do we do now?" Jonathan leaned back in his chair. "We file a formal complaint with the HOA board, but not just about your situation. We present everything: her abuse of power, the financial mismanagement, the intimidation tactics. It's time to expose her for what she really is." Adam agreed, and together they prepared a comprehensive case. They compiled all the evidence: the threatening letters, the violation notices, the trespassing incident, and the documents Jonathan had uncovered. It wasn't just about clearing Adam's name anymore. It was about bringing Martha to justice and protecting the neighborhood from her tyranny. In the days leading up to the board meeting, Adam noticed a shift in the neighborhood. Neighbors who had once avoided him now stopped by to chat, sharing their own stories of Martha's bullying. Many of them expressed support, grateful that someone was finally standing up to her. Adam encouraged them to attend the upcoming meeting, knowing their voices would strengthen the case. When the day arrived, the community center was packed. Word had spread about the allegations, and curiosity had drawn even the most apathetic residents out of their homes. The tension in the room was palpable as the meeting began. Martha sat at the head of the table, her expression carefully composed, but Adam could see the cracks in her confidence. Jonathan took the floor first, presenting the evidence with precision and clarity. As he spoke, gasps rippled through the crowd. The financial records, the emails, the memos. It was undeniable. Martha had been abusing her position for personal gain, and now her actions were laid bare for all to see. When it was Adam's turn to speak, he kept it simple. "This isn't just about my property," he said, his voice steady. "It's about someone who used their authority to intimidate, manipulate, and control. We all deserve better." The room erupted in applause. Even members of the board, many of whom had been complicit out of fear or ignorance, seemed to realize the gravity of the situation. They called for a vote of no confidence, and when the results were announced, it was unanimous. Martha was removed as president effective immediately. Martha didn't stay to hear the decision. She stormed out of the room, her face flushed with anger and humiliation. For the first time in months, Adam felt a sense of relief. The battle was over, and the neighborhood could finally begin to heal. But as he walked back to his car, he couldn't shake a lingering thought. Martha was gone for now. But people like her didn't disappear quietly. She'd underestimated him once, and if she ever returned, he'd be ready. In the days following Martha's removal, the neighborhood began to transform. The air felt lighter, conversations more open, and for the first time since moving in, Adam felt a true sense of community. Without Martha's oppressive presence looming over them, the residents started reconnecting. They discussed new ways to make the HOA more transparent and inclusive, ensuring the mistakes of the past wouldn't be repeated. Adam, however, remained cautious. While the battle had been won, he couldn't ignore the possibility that Martha might try to retaliate. Jonathan shared his concerns. "People like her rarely accept defeat," he warned. "Keep documenting everything and don't let your guard down." Still, Adam allowed himself to relax a little. He resumed his gardening, taking comfort in the small joys of tending to his roses and watching his yard come to life. Neighbors stopped by occasionally to chat, many expressing their gratitude for his courage in standing up to Martha. One evening, as he was watering his plants, a man named Tom, one of the more vocal neighbors during the meeting, stopped by. "I heard what you did at the meeting," Tom said, shaking Adam's hand firmly. "You stood your ground, and because of that, we all have a chance to make this place better." "Thank you." Adam smiled, feeling a sense of pride. "It wasn't just me. Everyone stepping up made it possible. But just as the neighborhood began to heal, a shadow loomed on the horizon. A week after the meeting, Adam received an anonymous letter in his mailbox. The handwriting was jagged and the words were short and chilling. "Enjoy your victory while it lasts. This isn't over." Adam's stomach tightened as he read the note. He immediately called Jonathan, who advised him to document it and notify the police. Though there was no signature, Adam had no doubt who was behind it. Martha wasn't finished. Over the next few days, small, unsettling events began to occur. His trash cans were mysteriously overturned, a small patch of his garden was trampled, and once he thought he saw a familiar car idling at the corner of his street late at night. Though he couldn't confirm it, he felt Martha's presence lingering, like a storm waiting to break. Determined not to let her reclaim any power over his life, Adam remained vigilant. He upgraded his security system, installed brighter outdoor lights, and made sure to stay connected with his neighbors. When he shared his concerns, many of them rallied around him, forming a community watch group to ensure everyone felt safe. Despite the unease, Adam refused to let fear dictate his life. Martha may have been relentless, but so was he. She had underestimated him once, and now the entire neighborhood was on his side. As the weeks turned into months, the incidents dwindled and Martha's name became a hushed memory. Whether she had given up or simply retreated to plot her next move, Adam didn't know. But one thing was certain: if she ever returned, she'd face a neighborhood united, stronger than ever. For Adam, the battle against Martha wasn't just about standing up for his rights. It was about learning the power of resilience, the importance of community, and the courage to face intimidation head-on. He had found his sanctuary after all, not just in his home, but in the strength he discovered within himself and the bonds he built with those around him. And as for Martha, her reign was over, but Adam knew better than to believe she was gone for good. If she ever tried to rise again, he would be ready, this time with a neighborhood standing right beside him. Months had passed since Martha's dramatic downfall, and life in the neighborhood seemed to have finally returned to normal. The once fractured community began to rebuild, forming a stronger, more supportive bond. Adam became a quiet leader in this transformation, not because he sought attention, but because his actions had inspired others to stand up for themselves. The new HOA board, now under the leadership of Richard, worked diligently to repair the damage Martha had caused. They implemented new transparency measures, held regular meetings where all residents could voice their concerns, and established clear boundaries for what the HOA could and couldn't enforce. For the first time in years, the HOA began to serve its intended purpose, fostering harmony, not fear. Adam found peace in his day-to-day life. His garden flourished, his backyard became a haven, and he even started hosting small gatherings for neighbors, a stark contrast to the tense isolation he'd felt before. The neighborhood had truly become a place he could call home. But the shadow of Martha lingered in the back of his mind. Though the incidents had stopped and she hadn't been seen since her ousting, Adam knew better than to assume she had disappeared completely. He kept his security measures in place and continued to document anything unusual just in case. One crisp autumn morning, Adam received a call from Jonathan. His tone was casual, but there was an undercurrent of seriousness. "Adam, you might want to sit down for this." Adam's stomach sank. "What is it?" "Martha's filed a lawsuit against the HOA, Jonathan explained. "She's claiming wrongful removal and demanding compensation for damages to her reputation." Adam let out a dry laugh. "Of course she is. She can't let it go." Jonathan sighed. "It's unlikely she'll get anywhere with it given the evidence we presented, but she's clearly trying to stir the pot. I thought you should know." Adam thanked Jonathan and hung up, his mind racing. While the lawsuit wasn't aimed directly at him, it felt like a reminder that Martha wasn't finished with her games. He shared the news with a few neighbors and the response was unanimous. They wouldn't let her intimidate them again. The community rallied once more, attending HOA meetings in record numbers and supporting the board as they prepared to fight Martha's baseless claims. This time the battle wasn't just Adam's to fight. It belonged to the entire neighborhood. Together they stood united, ready to defend the progress they'd made. When the court date arrived, Adam and several neighbors attended as witnesses. They watched as Martha, visibly less confident than before, attempted to plead her case. But her arguments fell flat, her allegations unraveling under scrutiny. The judge dismissed her claims, citing her documented abuse of power and the overwhelming evidence against her. As the ruling was announced, Adam felt a sense of finality. Martha had overplayed her hand and this time there was no coming back. After the hearing, as Adam walked out of the courthouse, he felt lighter than he had in months. Martha's reign of terror was officially over, her attempts to claw her way back to power thwarted. The neighborhood could finally move forward without the weight of her interference. Back at home, Adam sat in his backyard, surrounded by the garden he had poured his heart into. The roses swayed gently in the breeze, their vibrant colors a symbol of growth and resilience. He had faced intimidation, harassment, and even threats, but through it all he had stood his ground. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Adam allowed himself to smile. His home was no longer just a house, it was a sanctuary. And though he knew life would always bring challenges, he also knew he had the strength to face them no matter what, or who, came his way. Can you imagine someone cutting your lock just to prove a point? What would you do if your privacy was invaded like this? What Adam didn't know was that Martha's next move would cross a serious line. Little did Adam realize, this was just the beginning of Martha's schemes. And that's how Adam stood his ground and reclaimed his peace of mind. If you enjoyed this story, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next jaw-dropping tale. Thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next video.